watching AnewZ. I'm Nadia Jani. Here are the top stories. The Israeli military told Palestinians in Gaza City to leave for the south. Trump says he is very disappointed that India has been buying oil from Russia. And the European Commission has fined Google almost €3 billion for breaching EU antitrust rules. Israeli forces have ordered residents of Gaza City to evacuate as troops press deeper into the city. The Israel Defense Forces say civilians should head to Al-Mawasi, a designated humanitarian zone in the southern city of Khan Yunis. Military spokesperson Avicii Ardrey said on social media that the area offers food, tents and medical supplies. He urged residents to move early and join the thousands who have already relocated in recent days. Staying on Gaza, even though Israel has issued these orders, many residents say they have nowhere safe to go.
Israeli forces continue operations in Gaza City after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered the capture of the city, calling it a Hamas stronghold that must fall to defeat the militants. But the operation threatens to displace hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, many of whom had already fled earlier in the war.
In regard to the leaflets that were dropped, they want us to displace. Why would we do that? There are bombardments everywhere. We cannot leave. That's it. We will die here. We are not leaving. We are tired.
Others say they have moved from city to city throughout the conflict, only to face the same destruction.
We were displaced before to the south. There were also martyrs there and bombardment. It is all the same. All displacement is for nothing. It is enough.
As the offensive intensifies, mourning and anger are mounting.
I want this message to reach the White House, the Americans who send their weapons to kill the children and women. Fear God in Gaza. We are tired from burying our loved ones every day. Where are you people? Arabs? Americans? Don't you have children? Our children are being killed and exterminated. We are being exterminated.
The Israeli military says tens of thousands of reservists have been called up to support the operation as troops push deeper into Gaza City.
Joining us to discuss the latest on the war in Gaza now is geopolitical analyst AnewZ Schwartz. Good evening, AnewZ.
Hi, good evening, and thank you so much for having me on your show.
My first question is, what more do we know about Israel's attacks on Gaza City and their humanitarian impact?
So I would dial back into what we've heard already on your show earlier, which is that, and we've seen the Israelis dropping leaflets over Gaza City, advising residents to move to Mawasi, which is further to the south, which is a humanitarian area. It was already designated as such, and the Israeli army has secured it from the Hamas terrorist group. What Hamas is doing is they are telling the residents of Gaza City to stay put, so that the Israeli army will not be able to go in and dismantle the last battalions of the Hamas terrorist group. So this is really what Gaza residents are up against. They are between the Hamas terrorists, which tell them and threaten them and actively attack them when they try to leave Gaza City towards Mawasi, and the Israeli army, which is trying to go in to destroy Hamas and to liberate the 20 or so of the kidnapped Israelis who are still believed to be alive in the hands of Hamas in Gaza City, under Gaza City to be exact, in the tunnels there, and then again to destroy Hamas itself. So look, it's a terrible situation for the Gaza residents. and again, we have amongst the Gaza residents, we have those who are against Hamas, those who were against Hamas even before October 7th, but their voices were stifled. They were under death threats from Hamas if they took the courage upon themselves to say anything. And then you have those who are part and parcel of the support of Hamas and part of the families of Hamas, which try to again to block any sort of resolution to this conflict, which is almost 2 years already. We are up against the barrier of October 7th again in about a month and a day from now. So. Again, there is no ideal situation for the residents of Gaza who are against Hamas, who would like Hamas to be dismantled. There is no easy way also for the Israeli army to act in a way which will safeguard those who are still alive in the hands of Hamas under Gaza, and also not to harm civilians in Gaza. And not to tarnish the image of Israel further in the eyes of decent Europeans, Americans, etc., as well as Asians, Africans, and beyond, who have no stake directly in this conflict, but who see these images out of Gaza. And who are swayed in the direction of Hamas ultimately by this unidirectional flux of images from Gaza, because we also have from Gaza the primary source of information, of videos, etc., being Hamas itself, because the independent journalists in Gaza do not exist. They are Hamas. Those who were independent were beaten severely, some of them killed. I'm talking about the Palestinians from Gaza who were independent of Hamas, who were reporting from their images which Hamas did not agree with. And that's the primary source of information and of images. So for anyone from the BBC to AnewZ, that's really the situation there. The Israelis themselves were accused of not letting in journalists from other countries in there, but the risk there would have been that they would be used again as human shields, as hostages, and or be taken into the tunnels and used as as the Israelis were, as bargaining chips for Hamas.
And Mr. Schwartz, so next week, the 9th of September, is the key date where a number of European countries, as well as Canada, Australia, and others, will recognise Palestine as its own state. Will that have an impact on Israel's campaign to take over Gaza City, or will this hinder their efforts?
It will not have an impact on the campaign, I believe. Look, many former communist countries in Eastern Europe, at the behest of the Soviet Union at the time, have recognized a Palestinian state back in the 80s, 88, most of them. Did that change anything? Did it have, did it have an impact on at that time on Fatah and Arafat, Yasser Arafat, the Cairo-born revolutionary who was a pawn of Moscow, and the building of a Palestinian state? No, Arafat was given a Palestinian state also as late as the year 2000, when Ehud Barak was the prime minister of Israel. Yasser Arafat was, together with him, invited to the White House and to Camp David, and he was basically offered a Palestinian state at the urging of the U.S. administration of the time. Did this have any impact on the ground? No, because Yasser Arafat did not want to accept, a Palestinian state, which would have had at that time half of Jerusalem as its capital. Why? Because the project of Yasser Arafat as well as the project of Hamas is the same. It's not establishing another Arab state. It would be the 23rd Arab state in the world. It's not another Islamic state, majority state. It would be the 57th one in the world. It's really dismantling the one Jewish state. So, will this have an impact? No, it won't have an impact. Will it stop the Israeli army from going in and trying to, save the 20 or so Israeli hostages, plus recover the bodies of the 30 or so Israelis and others whose bodies are under in the tunnels under Gaza City? No, that seems to be the only way forward to achieve that and to destroy Hamas, because Hamas has promised, after October 7th, has promised through the voices of its leaders to repeat the 7th of October 2023 as many times as possible when they will have again the force, the strength to do so. So what are the options for Israel in face of such a promise? Just to believe the terrorist organization and to
Thank you so much. Sorry to cut in there. Thank you so much for your insights and for joining me this evening, Mr. Schwartz. Thank you. US President Donald Trump has criticized India for purchasing large amounts of oil from Russia, calling the move very disappointing. Speaking from the Oval Office, Trump confirmed his administration had imposed a 50% tariff on Indian goods in response. He voiced clear disapproval of New Delhi's energy ties with Moscow, but insisted the US and India still share a special relationship, despite what he called occasional moments of disagreement.
Unbelievable find. I've been very disappointed that India would be buying so much oil, as you know, from Russia. And I let them know that. We put a very big tariff on India, 50% tariff, very high tariff.
And are you ready to reset relations with India at this point?
I always will. I'll always be friends with Modi. He's great. Prime Minister, he's great. I'll always be friends, but I just don't like what he's doing at this particular moment. But India and the United States have a special relationship. There's nothing to worry about. We just have moments on occasion.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Kyiv will continue striking back against Russian energy targets, even as neighbouring countries face fallout. Speaking after talks with Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico in Uzhhorod, Zelensky defended Ukraine's actions, stressing Russia has bombarded Ukrainian power facilities for years. Slovakia and Hungary are still reliant on Russian oil and gas and have seen disruptions in supplies through the Druzhba pipeline following recent Ukrainian attacks. Fico criticised Ukraine's energy policies previously in the past, but warned such strikes also hurt his country.
There is no alternative to peace, and we support it. This war has to end. Russia must stop the war, as they are the only party that started it and unfortunately continues to drag it out. We count on support for our peace efforts. Ukraine responds to Russia's attacks on our energy facilities and will keep doing so. But we really want this war to end. However, no one is going to just sit in the dark and tolerate it. We are open to joint projects in the energy sector and remain open to supplying Slovakia with oil and gas, unless, as I made clear to the Prime Minister, the gas and oil comes from Russia, because we are at war, period.
We respect how countries protect their national interests, but at the same time, we should also respect the interests of others. We discussed with Vladimir Putin the issue of attacks on oil infrastructure on the territory of the Russian Federation. We also discussed the fact that Russia is no longer able to transport energy to Slovakia. As you know, this has led to strong political statements on both sides. I have spoken about the losses incurred by Slovakia.
Thousands of anti-government protesters gathered in northern Serbia, leading to clashes with riot police. Protesters joined a demonstration to demand elections. Police used tear gas and stun grenades to disperse protesters in the area around the city's university campus. The protests began in response to the tragedy in November last year, when 16 people were killed due to the collapse of a train station roof in Novi Sad. Demonstrators are blaming corruption for the disaster and are calling for those responsible to be held accountable. To France now, where a no-confidence vote is set for Monday. This is due to French Prime Minister François Barrot's proposed budget bill and spending cuts. Polls indicate that 2/3 of voters oppose his austerity plan. Political commentators expect Barrot's government to fall. But for more on what's at stake for France, we go to our Anita Sharma and her segment This Day in Europe.
Welcome to This Day in Europe, where France veers toward a political and financial crisis as Prime Minister François Bayrou faces a high-stakes no-confidence vote Monday. Tied to the controversial €44 billion austerity package, the showdown threatens to collapse the French government. It comes just days before a crucial credit rating review by global credit rating agency Fitch, which could send shockwaves through international markets. Bayrou's proposed spending cuts are designed to rein in France's ballooning deficit. They include reducing public holidays, raising out-of-pocket medical costs, and tightening pension thresholds. But with no parliamentary majority and growing opposition within his own centrist alliance, Bayrou's grip on power is slipping fast. Political observers say his chances of surviving the vote are slim, and a failure would make him the second prime minister to fall in under a year. Public backlash is growing too. Recent polls suggest nearly 2/3 of French voters oppose the austerity plan, and street protests have gathered momentum in cities from Marseille to Paris. On September 12th, Fitch Ratings will release its latest review of France's sovereign credit score, which is currently AA- with a negative outlook. If the government fails the confidence vote, the message, little or no support for fiscal austerity, could prompt Fitch to cut its rating down to A+ and pave the way for other agencies such as Moody's and S&P Global to follow suit. Downgrades would be a severe blow, especially with France's public debt expected to exceed 118% of GDP by next year. The markets have been reacting, with 10-year French bond yields recently hitting their highest spread over German bunds since April. France is not the only European country dealing with significant debt issues, but given that it's the second largest economy, analysts warn a downgrade could trigger a broader investor pullback, raising borrowing costs and weakening France's position in the Eurozone. France plays a pivotal role in European financial stability, so any erosion of investor confidence in Paris could ripple through the broader bloc, testing everything from ECB policy credibility to the resilience of EU-wide fiscal rules. Earlier this week, ECB President Christine Lagarde warned that the collapse of a Eurozone government would be, quote, worrying. With Bayrou's political future hanging by a thread and a credit downgrade looming on the horizon, France finds itself at a dangerous intersection where fiscal credibility, political leadership, and investor trust converge. Next week could prove decisive, not just for France, but also for the Eurozone's financial reputation. For AnewZ, I'm Anita Sharma, reporting from Arnhem, Netherlands.
The European Union has fined Google nearly €3 billion over anti-competitive practices in digital advertising. The company now has 60 days to end the conduct or face tougher remedies.
The European Commission has imposed a €2.95 billion penalty on Google, accusing the company of abusing its dominance in the online advertising technology sector. Regulators say the conduct distorted Europe's digital advertising market since 2014, forcing publishers and advertisers to rely on Google's systems. Google now has 60 days to present a plan to end these practices, while regulators continue to weigh stronger remedies, including a potential breakup of some services. The tech giant has rejected the ruling, calling it unjustified, and announced plans to appeal. Executives warned the changes could hurt thousands of European businesses that depend on online advertising revenues. This is the fourth major antitrust case Google has faced in Brussels in under a decade, adding to previous multi-billion euro penalties. But the timing of the fine is politically sensitive. Brussels initially delayed the fine out of concern it could disrupt a fragile EU-US trade deal, which still faces hurdles over tariffs on European cars. In Washington, President Donald Trump denounced the decision, describing it as part of a broader campaign against American tech companies.
We're upset with the European Union because of what's happening with not just Google, but with all of our big companies. They just, hit them with these these unbelievable fines, $17 billion and $14 billion. And they use that money to run Europe. It's almost become like common. It's almost become a yearly occurrence, like it's a tax.
He pointed to past actions against Apple and Google, claiming the fines amounted to tens of billions of dollars and signaled a broader pattern against US companies. Trump warned that Washington should respond in kind if European regulators continue this approach.
The delegations of Azerbaijan and Armenia conducted mutual visits on Friday to the territories of Azerbaijan and Armenia, led by Deputy Prime Ministers Shahin Mustafayev and Mahir Grigoryan. The talks focused on coordinating efforts for broader delimitation and demining, as well as restoring and building necessary infrastructure. The sides also discussed timelines for implementation and exchanged views on organising the next meetings of their respective joint border commissions. A new Gallup poll shows nearly 60% of Armenians oppose creating the Trump route, a major transport link seen as key for promoting peace and stability in the region. Here's more.
Around 60% of Armenian citizens oppose the Trump route for international peace and prosperity, a strategic transit corridor connecting mainland Azerbaijan with its Nakhchivan exclave through Armenian territory. That's according to a Gallup International poll presented by the organization's Armenian representative, Aram Navasardian. The survey, conducted in late August with more than 1,100 participants, revealed divided public opinion. Nearly 48% said they were completely against the plan, while 11% leaned negative. In contrast, 18% said they were somewhat supportive and 17% fully backed it. About 6% were undecided. Despite public resistance, regional leaders have already moved forward. The long-awaited agreement on the establishment of peace and interstate relations between Azerbaijan and Armenia was formally initialed on August 8th in Washington, when the presidents of both countries signed a joint declaration witnessed by US President Donald Trump. The text of the agreement was made public on August 11th. The deal grants the United States exclusive rights for 99 years to develop what is officially called the Trump route for international peace and prosperity. More than just a transport link, the Trump route represents a major step toward lasting peace and stability in the region. The project is expected to boost trade, improve mobility, and strengthen cooperation between both countries, marking a historic milestone in efforts to normalize relations and secure long-term regional stability.
Georgia's European future is once again at the centre of a heated debate as Brussels raises questions about visa-free travel. Tbilisi pushes back. Meanwhile, the polls show a public strongly committed to the European Union path, but divided on who bears responsibility for tensions. Our correspondent reports from Tbilisi.
Georgia's domestic politics are once again spilling over into its foreign relations, this time in the heated debate over the country's path toward Europe. Speaking about the possibility of Brussels suspending visa-free travel, Parliament Speaker Shalva Paposhvili pushed back sharply. He said that Brussels is not a court and cannot be a court, arguing that questions about justice in Georgia should be decided at home, not abroad. Baboshvili defended the country's legal system, insisting it operates at a high level, pointing to acquittals in recent verdicts and claiming Georgia even outranks some EU states in areas such as corruption and rule of law. He also accused certain European officials of bias and double standards, pointing to what he described as brutal dispersals of protests in cities like Berlin and Paris. But while government officials frame criticism from Brussels as unfair, public opinion inside Georgia tells a more complicated story. A new CRRC survey shows that if visa-free travel were suspended, more than half of Georgians would blame the ruling Georgian Dream Party and its founder, Bidina Ivanishvili. Only a small fraction would hold the EU responsible. And despite political tensions, support for European Union membership remains overwhelming. Nearly 80% of Georgians say that they back joining the bloc, with the highest support among young people. The result is a widening gap. On one side, government leaders portraying Brussels as overreaching, and on the other, a public that continues to see its future firmly in Europe. This tension raises the core question. In Georgia today, is backing the EU the same as opposing the ruling party, or has foreign policy become hostage to the battles of domestic politics? It's Nini Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi, AnewZ.
Now to Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev has highlighted a growing energy-driven partnership with China, securing multi-billion-dollar deals in oil, gas and infrastructure. At the same time, Central Asian nations are also discussing cooperation with the United States under the C5+1 framework in Dushanbe. To better understand Kazakhstan's balancing act between major powers, I'm now joined by Dr. Nurulbulat Nishanbayev from Turan University in Almaty. Good evening, Mr. Nishanbayev.
Good evening.
My first question is, President Tokayev called his visit to China very productive, with $15 billion worth of deals signed. How do these agreements reshape Kazakhstan's energy and investment landscape?
And definitely, a recent President Tokayev visit to China, it was a huge step expanding China and Kazakhstan cooperation in terms of energy and logistics and many other aspects. I think for China, Kazakhstan is taking very important place in the last few years. Therefore, we will see expanding Chinese influence in Central Asia and in Kazakhstan for the long term, in particular in energy sector.
Okay, and beyond oil and gas, what other sectors of cooperation between Kazakhstan and China do you see expanding?
Definitely, I see some rising fields in the field of educational and innovation, plus the use of artificial intelligence in industries and in cultural exchange programs between people to the people, between Kazakhstan and China. So therefore, those foundational classical aspects, investment, economy and trade, will create foundation for the other new sphere of influence, sphere of relations between China and Kazakhstan.
And how important are those deals that Kazakhstan made with China? Will that boost the economy even more, do you think?
I can't say totally with one-side answer, because it depends on the both sides. First of all, on the second, it depends on the economic sovereignty, economic independency of the Kazakhstan as well. So therefore, for Kazakhstan, all the time, as a state who is running for the last 30 years multi-vector foreign policy, for them is very important to keep the balance in the economy, in the foreign policy. So therefore, I think rising Chinese role in the example of Kazakhstan foreign policy will play as a counterbalance to the Russian and the Western economic relations.
Central Asian nations are also strengthening talks with the US. How does Kazakhstan navigate balancing China, Russia and America influence in the region?
Definitely, historically, if we look at to the Central Asia in the last 30 years, we see the United States has played very crucial role. But however, in the last couple of years, we see declining the role of United States, not only in Kazakhstan, but in the whole Central Asia. But Last week, we have seen in Dushanbe in Tashkent C5+1 forum meetings. I think it's a very symbolic, which took place after the end of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Beijing. It also shows to what extent is important for Central Asian states having balanced economic relations. So therefore, I think for Dushanbe, for the wider region, for Central Asia, having counterbalanced, having balanced economic relations with the West as well as with the East will provide at certain step security and strategically stability for the long term.
And just on that then, looking ahead, do you see Kazakhstan's foreign policy leaning more towards one partner, or will it be multifaceted, as you mentioned previously?
Exactly, you have mentioned very important aspects. It's a matter of discussion as well as it's a matter of many other factors. It depends on many other factors. But however, for states like Kazakhstan, who shares the border with the greatest two powers, who has a strongest influence with Russia and China, for them all the time is kind of difficult to put aside, because it will be very strategic vision. It will be very important for the state to keep the balance between the great powers. So for such a kind of states, let's say states who shares the borders with the great powers, for them all the time was very important to keep balance some in between the two powers. So therefore for Kazakhstan, I think now is a rising interest which China will create for the long term balanced policies in economy. It will provide, I think, multi-vector foreign policy for the region.
Well, thank you so much for joining me this evening, Mr. Nishanbayev. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi met with EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas in Qatar to discuss the latest developments regarding Iran's nuclear program and the ways to advance a diplomatic settlement.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi discussed bilateral relations and regional developments with the Emir of Qatar, Tamim Al Thani, Tehran's nuclear program with the EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas, as well as the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza with the Deputy Chairman of Political Bureau of the ruling Palestinian group Khalil al-Hayya during a one-day visit to the neighboring Persian Gulf state of Qatar. According to the official Qatari news agency Qana, Araghchi conveyed the verbal message of the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian to Emir of Qatar on expansion of bilateral ties and issues of common concern, particularly the regional developments. Also, Iran's official IRNA news agency reported that Araghchi met with Kaja Kallas, during which the latest developments related to Iran's nuclear issue, especially the move by 3 European countries, France, Germany and the UK, to restore the repealed UN Security Council resolutions were discussed. Quoting a foreign ministry press release, the report said that Iran's top diplomat and the EU foreign policy chief further exchanged views on the interaction between Tehran and the International Atomic Energy Agency IAEA, which was suspended following the war on Iran's civilian nuclear sites last June. Local media quoted Iran's ambassador to the United Nations office in Vienna, Reza Najafi, saying that Tehran and IAEA held expert-level talks today discussing the new bilateral cooperation modality. During his stay in Doha, Araghchi also met with a high-ranking delegation of the Palestinian group Hamas, led by Khalil al-Hayya. According to the Press TV, affiliated to Iran's state IRIB broadcasting organization, the Iranian foreign minister reaffirmed Tehran's commitment to supporting the Palestinian people's legitimate resistance against Israeli occupation until their rights are fully restored. Turaj Shiralilu, reporting for AnewZ TV, Tehran.
In Afghanistan, powerful earthquakes and aftershocks have devastated the northeast of the country. More than 2,000 people are confirmed dead, thousands more injured, and survivors are left without homes or basic supplies. Aid agencies warn the response has been slow.
In the wake of a devastating earthquake, families in Afghanistan's northeastern Kunar province have lost their homes and possessions as two powerful aftershocks continued to shake the region. The two strong aftershocks struck eastern Afghanistan 12 hours apart, raising fears of further deaths and destruction. The region has already seen around 2,200 people killed, with rescuers battling mountainous terrain and harsh weather conditions.
The government brought us here because rocks are still falling and there are still earthquakes. The whole country is shaking. This morning there was another strong quake and rocks rolled down. We cannot spend our time there. We are forced to stay here because we have no house and cannot live in the rain. During this disaster, many people were martyred, and that night it rained on them. There were 65 bodies. We dug a trench and placed 45 of them inside. For the rest, we cleared out old graves and buried them there.
Entire households were buried under rubble, leaving survivors with little more than the clothes on their backs. Children are reported to be traumatized by the ongoing tremors.
We have no shelter, no tent, no mattress, and no carpet. There is no water. People bring us hot water, but apart from that, there is nothing. We need cash assistance because all our belongings and property were buried under the rubble. We came from our area with only one set of clothes.
Don't even ask about the fear. If a car passes by here, the children get scared and start crying. I carry this one in my arms all day long. Even a slight shake makes them afraid.
The first quake, of magnitude 6, struck just before midnight on Sunday at a shallow depth of 10 kilometres. It caused widespread damage in Nangarhar and Kunar provinces. A second earthquake, magnitude 5.5, hit on Tuesday, causing landslides and blocking roads to remote villages, interrupting rescue operations. Survivors are struggling for basic necessities, while the United Nations and other agencies warn of a critical need for funds, food, medical supplies and shelter. The World Health Organization is seeking $4 million to respond. Turkish Red Crescent vehicles have been seen in Kunar, but overall aid response has been slow. The Taliban administration reported 2,205 deaths and 3,640 injuries as of Thursday, September 4th.
Well, that's all the news we have for you from Baku. Stay tuned to AnewZ for more updates. Take care.